Love music, live sport. Pole Position with Andy Alston and Adam Todd on RockSport Radio.
Hello and welcome to Pole Position, the motorsport show here on RockSport Radio. Andy Alston with you alongside Adam Todd, broadcasting live on DAB, digital radio, across central Scotland, online and on TuneIn. And on the show this week, Mercedes don't want to toil on home soil, Verne goes gritty to win the title in New York City, Marquez continues to thrive and takes win number 5, and we talk all things rally with David Halley. All this and more on Pole Position. So, Formula 1 returns this weekend as we head to the Hockenheimring for the German Grand Prix in the 11th round of this year's championship. Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel leads the way at the top of the drivers' standings on 171 points, 8 points ahead of Lewis Hamilton. And Adam, this is a race that Mercedes know they have to win as we head into the second half of the season.
Absolutely, and there's been some interesting comments from team principal at Mercedes this week, Toto Wolff, who was saying that during that three-race triple header, the first time we've ever had that in Formula 1, that Mercedes did have the quickest car on the grid, but ultimately it was Ferrari who kind of took the initiative, Sebastian Vettel taking the championship lead. And the big thing that hurt Mercedes really was obviously what happened in Austria, double retirement, the first time that had happened technically since they'd came back into the sport, so a real disastrous weekend in Austria for them. And then at Silverstone, obviously Hamilton getting clipped, so it's a big race for Lewis Hamilton as well in terms of the championship, because he won't want that advantage to Sebastian Vettel to go any further.
Absolutely, and yes, there's plenty of races to go in this battle for the Drivers' Championship, but I get the impression that it's Sebastian Vettel that's now slowly beginning to build that momentum, Adam, and if he wins on home soil, of course, this weekend, that could give him a big boost in confidence.
Yeah, it certainly will on home soil. He's won there once before, but not at the Hockenheimring, which is where we are this weekend. And you're right, if Sebastian Vettel wins this weekend, and again he's taking more points out of Lewis Hamilton, and Mercedes are obviously saying they've got the fastest car, but at the moment they're not getting the most out of it. So as I said, the start of the season was crucial as well, because Ferrari lost a lot of points at the start through bad luck, you could say, with virtual safety cars and safety car periods. Sebastian Vettel lost a lot of points, and then it was starting to look as if Mercedes might actually just be taking control of this championship, and it's flipped on its head again. Great entertainment for us though.
Absolutely, and of course Mercedes have a lot of history at this circuit as well, Adam.
Yeah, that's right. The track originally built in the 1930s, and it was a high-speed Mercedes test circuit, and then it was also redesigned after the 2001 German Grand Prix for the 2002 season. There were new grandstands installed, and they were also sponsored by Mercedes-Benz, so there will certainly be a lot of Mercedes fans this weekend.
Yeah, and it's a big battle in the Drivers' and the Constructors' Championship, but it's also a big battle for the future of the German Grand Prix as well, because this race has been held every second year since 2014, and before that it had alternated between the Hockenheimring and the Nürburgring as well. So the German Grand Prix isn't on the calendar for next season as it stands. And joining us on Pole Position to talk more about this and look ahead to the race this weekend is Luke Smith from Crash.net. And Luke, thanks very much for joining us on the show. How important is it to have this race on the calendar for Formula 1?
I think it's absolutely vital. Germany is such an important market for F1. It has been for decades now. Obviously, the success of Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel, more recently Nico Rosberg. It's all brought into, there's a lot of national pride, I think, bound up in this race and what Germany does in F1. But, Nico Hülkenberg came out with an interesting idea today, saying maybe German fans were just spoiled by the success that Schumacher and Vettel had, and that more recently, because there hasn't been that same kind of achievement, that people are maybe turning off and not so interested, and that there are other ways that they can promote basically what they're doing in F1 without having a race. But I think it's crucial. I mean, they talk about wanting to protect the homeland races and have the classic tracks. Well, Hockenheim's about as classic as you get, I think. So I think it's really, really important they do what they can to keep this race on the calendar.
Yeah, definitely. And, in days gone by, Luke, we had the German Grand Prix as a standalone event at the Hockenheimring. I was growing up in the days where the Nürburgring hosted a European Grand Prix. So do you think maybe the fact that it's kind of juggled between Hockenheimring and the Nürburgring, it's maybe affected the German Grand Prix as a whole over the years, rather than, just having one circuit for this race?
Potentially, yeah. Again, if German fans had 2 races to attend, then they might kind of think, oh, there's so much point going to Hockenheim. I know there's going to be one at Nürburgring or vice versa. And I think that because it's not really had a set home, that maybe has, I guess, killed some of the they talk about date equity for races, whereby you have the same single date every single year. You know that beginning of the week of July, you're going to be going to Silverstone to the British Grand Prix. Germany's never had that same kind of sort of cemented place on the calendar in the past 10 years or so. So, I think it has definitely had an effect. But hopefully they can get back to that status in the future, because I think it's so important we come here.
And looking ahead to the race this weekend, how do you think Mercedes will approach this one?
I think they know they need to have a response, because, the last few races, they know they should have won, and they still maintain that they have the quickest car for all of the last 3 races. But things just didn't add up and just didn't work for them. They need to hit back. They need to hit back hard. And Lewis Hamilton, obviously, with a new contract under his belt now as well, he really needs to make an aggression and show what he's doing and get back in his title fight, because it's swung badly towards Sebastian Vettel in the last few races. We'll see that. I think Ferrari have been very, very good recently, and I think they're not to be underestimated. And I think this could be a really big challenge for Mercedes to try and strike back. But it'll be a big statement if they can manage it.
Look, you mentioned Lewis Hamilton signing a new contract there. He signed a 2-year deal which will last at Mercedes until the end of 2020. But are you surprised by the length of that deal?
No, I think it makes sense. I think that he's looking to the next regulations, and I think a lot of drivers are sort of wanting to know what F1 will look like in 2021. And the same goes for the teams as well. I mean, Mercedes, there's been speculation here and there about them potentially quitting F1 at the end of this regulation cycle. So I guess Lewis may think that he wants to keep his options open, and if Mercedes were to walk away then, he might want to do the same, or he could look at other options in another team. Or if the regulations come along and there's something that he's really not interested by, he can just walk away and not need to stick around. So I think it's a good length for all parties involved.
Hi, look, Adam here. How important is this race for Sebastian Vettel, racing in front of his home crowd, and especially coming off that victory at Silverstone, where he obviously beat Lewis Hamilton on home turf?
Yeah, it's crucial. I think he's been in such good form recently, and to fight back from Paul Ricard, where his title hopes really seemed to take a dent, and turn that into leading quite nicely in the 2 races that followed. I think he's done fantastically well, but he now needs to take that extra step forward. And he's won in Germany before he won the 2013 race at the Nürburgring. He's never won at Hockenheim, and he's always said that this is a race that he really wants to win. It's not too far away from his hometown, Heppenheim. And I think he knows that if he can win this race and get together this sort of string of results that maybe was lacking in the start of the season, it would do a lot to Mercedes. It would shake them up a little bit. And we're going to be going back to sort of a good run of races since Mercedes last won a race, if he can get this one under his belt as well. So the pressure's on, but it's a really good chance, I think, for Ferrari to deal a big blow to Mercedes' hopes.
And look, you mentioned Mercedes' comments earlier in the show about how they had said they had the fastest car. Do you believe they do have the fastest car, or do Ferrari?
I think it's very, very close. I think that it's maybe a little presumptuous of Mercedes to say that we have the outright fastest car. I think Ferrari, particularly on the engine side, we've seen them make such big strides forward recently, and you can see that in their customer teams as well. Haas, Sauber, they're both doing fantastically well. So I think it's neck and neck, and I think it is literally going to be dependent on minor things like track temperature or degradation or things like that. And I think it's going to swing back and forth. But I think this weekend it's just too close to call, way too close to call. But that makes for a really good championship, so it's a really good thing.
Yeah, it should be fascinating to watch. And talking about the Constructors' Championship, how important do you feel Kimi Raikkonen's performances have been for Ferrari this year? Because he's obviously third in the drivers at the moment, and that's obviously helping Ferrari take the advantage over Mercedes.
Yeah, he's done really, really well. And I think for all of the talk about Charles Leclerc possibly stepping up and taking his seat, I think Kimi needs to be given a lot of credit. He's on course for his best season since rejoining Ferrari. He scored 7 podiums last year. He scored 6 already this season in the first 10 races. So he's on course for a fantastic season. And I think in previous years we've kind of seen a very lopsided constructors' charge from Ferrari, where Vettel's scored 2/3 of the points and Kimi's sort of chipped in. This year, sure, okay, Kimi isn't scoring to the same level that Sebastian is, but it's still a good enough amount. And we're seeing obviously Bottas is in a similar position where he's putting good displays, but he just doesn't have the point focus to match Lewis Hamilton. So I think this constructors title fight, last year it was kind of done with pretty early. This year I think he can go all the way because Kimi, he's in good form, and I think I don't know if it's just he's found a new lease of life with this car, or he's feeling under pressure because he needs to perform if he wants to keep a seat with Ferrari. But he's really doing well this year, and I think that needs to be recognised.
Luke, what do you think Red Bull will be aiming to achieve this weekend? Of course, they struggled last time out at Silverstone with the long straights. Hockenheim has some long straights as well, but of course it's got that stadium section as well. We know that aero package for the Red Bull is strong, so do you think they could maybe fancy an outside chance of a podium finish this weekend?
I think, yeah, that's what they'll be looking at. I think if they can get onto the podium, they'll consider it a job well done. They're already looking at this weekend that it's going to be a bit of a write-off, but Hungary should be a track that really, really suits them. Daniel Ricciardo said that he's looking to take an engine penalty this weekend, and he said that he'd rather do it here and then for Hungary be absolutely all set and have a really good chance of winning than have a bit of an off race here and then go into Hungary still with warm parts and not be confident of fighting at the front of the pack. So, I think it's going to be a big ask. I think that Mercedes and Ferrari will be leading the way. But as we saw at Silverstone, I mean, we can see some instances here that happen for the front runners, and that can play into the Red Bull guys' hands. So I wouldn't rule it out completely, but yeah, I think a podium is probably the best it's going to get for them.
Look, there seems to be a rumour doing the rounds at the minute that I want to get your thoughts on, and that's Lance Stroll, that he could leave Williams for Force India next season. Do you think there's any truth in this one?
It certainly makes a lot of sense. It's very feasible. Williams clearly is not a good place to be right now. Drivers there are really struggling. I think Sorokin came in as a very, very decent driver, and he's just not been able to do anything at all in the car, and it kind of saps all of the enthusiasm and enjoyment out of it. And even Stroll, I mean, he came in with all the pay drive allegations and things like that, but he did a good job last year. You could see the enjoyment. This year, there's none of that, and he's kind of just going from race to race, not really getting much out of it. Force India is a team that financially is in a bit of trouble. They do need to be able to pay off some of their debts. They owe a decent amount to Mercedes. So it would make sense that Stroll and the Stroll family took that finance to Force India, whether it's via investment or even speculation about Lawrence Stroll potentially buying the team. Then, that's a good place for Lawrence to be. And obviously the Mercedes engine is helpful, and that could give him a chance to really show what he can do in F1, because at the moment we're not really seeing that. But the only flip side of that is that Mercedes is really, really keen to get George Russell into that seat for next season. So whether that complicates things and whether we kind of have this struggle between, is it Mercedes or Stroll who get their say, I don't know. But there's lots of people looking at Force India, and I think very interested for next year despite the troubles there.
And just finally, Luke, if Stroll were to leave Williams, what impact do you think that could have in the team? Because they're struggling as it is at the moment, as you've mentioned there. Adam and I were having a bit of a chat off air about whether Robert Kubica could possibly come back into the frame there. Part of me kind of inwardly wonders, would Kubica want to necessarily join Williams? But, could this be, I don't like saying this, Luke, but it could be a really, really bad situation for them and have some severe consequences for the future of that team.
It could be, yeah, and it's kind of sad to think that a team that was so successful 20 years ago could be like looking at a really sort of uncertain future. And they've been very open about the need for a cost cap and how that is crucial to the future of the team. And really, I mean, the cost cap is looking set to come in, but there's going to be a lot of sort of terms with it. There's going to be a glide path for the bigger manufacturers, so they get another 3 years on top. And you've got to think that Williams, really, if they want to be fighting at the front, they're going to need to maybe find a new engine manufacturer that's not working with anyone else and say, look, we can give you a team to work with an F1, but we need your support, we need your finance. Because right now they're really the third choice Mercedes team. The car is terrible, frankly. It's shocking. In terms of the management of the team, there doesn't really seem to be a clear leader who's really taking the team by the neck and saying, I am going to pull this back to the front of the grid. And there's none of that. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame. And I think it is concerning that Stroll's considering going, given the level of finances does put into the team. There's a lot of jobs there. There's a lot of things that need to happen. And I think they know that if they want to recover, it's going to be expensive and it's going to take time. And ultimately, Stroll, while he may be not as good an option as Robert Kubica in terms of outright pace or development or things like that, the finance he offers, it can't be overlooked how important that is. So We'll see. I think Kubica, he has said about this car that the best thing he thinks about it is delivery or the engine, which is very telling. He doesn't say anything about the car itself. And I think he would jump at the chance to be back in the F1 seat, of course. But even with Williams, I think he would sort of be thinking, well, is it really worth it? Would it be worth this amazing story ending with an F1 comeback where you're going to finish sort of 14th, 15th, the best every weekend?
Brilliant. Look, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Great to chat with you again on Pole Position.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Luke Smith from Crash.net there. And stay with us as we talk all things Formula E up next on RockSport Radio.
Love music, live sport. Pole Position with Andy Alston and Adam Todd on RockSport Radio.
Now, Formula E drew to a close at the weekend as Jean-Eric Vergne clinched the driver's title at the New York City doubleheader last weekend. And Vergne finished in 5th place during the first race, which was enough to win the title. But he said that it wasn't easy.
It's absolutely incredible. So, huge thanks to my team. What we've done this year is unbelievable, and it wasn't easy, especially some drivers didn't make my life easy. They were over-consuming, and I had to over-consume to pass them. So it was definitely not an easy race, harder than Zurich, but the job is done. Doesn't matter how I did it, it's done.
And Adam, that 5th place finish was a good result as well, of course, after the drama that happened in qualifying. Just talk us through what happened there.
Yeah, terrific result from Jean-Eric Vergne to come right from the back of the grid up to 5th place in that race and take the championship. But basically what had happened was Vergne and also his teammate Andre Lotterer, they were thrown out of qualifying because they exceeded the maximum power allowance, and as a result, as I said, having to start the race from the back of the grid. And the cars aren't allowed to go over 200 kilowatts during their group qualifying runs, and unfortunately for Jean-Eric Vergne, his car recorded is reaching up to 205, so obviously 5 kilowatts over what is allowed. But nevertheless, you have to say, starting from the back of the grid and still to finish 5th, you were just thinking when that happened to Jean-Eric Vergne all of a sudden that, is Sam Bird maybe going to have a look in here, but it wasn't to be.
And credit to Vergne though, Adam. I mean, phenomenal season from him.
It's been an absolute outstanding season for Jean-Eric Vergne, I have to say, especially when you look at the pedigree of his teammate Andre Lotterer and just the way he has completely dominated him. Yeah, and you look at the quality of drivers that have came to Formula E, even tested a Formula E car. They've said how difficult it is. Jean-Eric Vergne had a few seasons in Formula 1 with Toro Rosso. I personally thought, he deserved kind of to be part of that Red Bull Academy. At the same time, they had 2 great drivers coming through in Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, but I don't think he was given at the end of the day a fair crack, and he was matching Daniel Ricciardo's pace. But yeah, I just think Jean-Eric Vergne, it's a completely different driving style Formula E, and the way he's mastered it so quickly as well, because even last season when he came in, he was really competitive, and this season, he's just been outstanding.
So what do you think was the secret behind this championship win?
Consistency. Every single race, apart from one, he was in the top 5, which I just think is outstanding. Yeah. And I always say consistency wins motorsport championships, and championships in general, no matter what sport it is. You have to be good everywhere. And he obviously had a disappointing result in Zurich, but he was still in the points, so he actually finished every race in the points, which, again, just incredible numbers. So consistency, definitely the key. And winning the four races as well, so more than any other driver. So a very, very successful season for Jean-Eric Vergne.
Yeah, I mean, he took his first win of the season, of course, at Santiago, in which that was the fourth round of the season. But for me, it was Ponte del Este, because he finished ahead of Lucas di Grassi in that race, and that was the one where both of those two drivers were battling all the way through the race. Great racing. Not one overtake though, but fantastic to watch. And, Sam Bird, on the other hand, he had been battling all the way. He could only manage 9th place in race 1, and he said that was down to a problem with his car.
We didn't have the efficiency today. That's the issue with our car. It's been the issue with our car all season. When the FIA give us 107 kilometre distances, then we fall apart. So not much I can do. I was happy with my drive. Congratulations to Jev. But yeah, tough day.
And Adam, even though Bird just missed out on second in the championship by a single point, of course he'd been trailing Verne for much of the season, ended up finishing in third place. I think all things considered, Sam Bird can still be proud of that season, Adam. Yeah,
definitely. Unfortunately, he was very unfortunate in New York last week, and we mentioned the track changes that had been made on last week's show, and you mentioned him there saying obviously because they've made it longer, efficiency a real issue for the DS Virgin Racing team. But take nothing away from Sam Bird's season, it will be disappointing for him not to have finished second, because he'd been second for much of the season. But I just mentioned how Jean-Eric Verne had completely dominated his teammate. Well, Sam Bird, he dominated his teammate even more. And the first rule in motorsport is to beat your teammate. Equal machinery. Alex Lynn only 17 points, Sam Bird 143. So it's been a very successful season for Sam Bird, and hopefully next season DS Virgin Racing can maybe learn from their efficiency problems that they've had this season and other issues, and really build on this, because they've got to take this as a positive year, because the car has been hot and cold, yet at the same time they've finished third in the championship. So a very, very good result.
Yeah, definitely. And Bird may point to Mexico City as one of the races he'd maybe like to forget. Ended up classified as 17th in that one, but overall very, very strong season. But in terms of that race one, we've mentioned Bird, we've mentioned Verne, we haven't mentioned the overall race winner from that one, which was Lucas de Grassi. He finished ahead of his Audi teammate Daniel Abt, and he explained how tough it was to take the checkered flag.
We try to score as much points as possible, fight fair, but it's pointless in Formula E. What you cannot do is open a gap when you're leading, because if you open a gap you waste energy, then a safety car happens, and then you are with less energy with the worst position. So at that moment that we were 1-2, I had to save as much energy as possible, keep Daniel behind, and then the safety car came, and then the rest of the laps were flat out, so completely different strategy.
Yeah, really interesting comments there, Adam, from Lucas de Grassi, talking about the importance of not running away at the front, just managing your power. What does he mean by that?
Yeah, well, again, de Grassi, another experienced driver who's obviously mastered Formula E, but managing the power, obviously, in Formula E, you've got the two cars where you make the pit stop, but at the same time, you've got to be careful, because it's all about energy and energy saving, really. And you're lifting and coasting into corners, you're not going kind of full throttle, so it really is a completely different style of driving. But I like that music in there as well. But no, de Grassi, he had a stunning weekend, didn't he? First and second, so it doesn't get too much better than that. And Audi would have been disappointed with the way their kind of season started, because that's what's cost them.
Yeah, I think de Grassi is one of the top drivers on the grid in terms of managing the power that he has in his car. Of course, the drivers, they start with a 100% fully charged battery. They've got to run it right down to 2% in a lot of instances before they make that driver change, as you mentioned there, Adam. Now, de Grassi finished second in the final race of the season, behind Jean-Eric Verne, meaning that Audi driver managed to pip Sam Bird to second in the championship. I dare say, I mean, it's harsh on Bird, Adam, but I dare say it's the right man that's in there at second, Lucas de Grassi, because he had a terrible start to the season, but fought his way through the second part very, very well.
Yeah, well, there's no denying Lucas de Grassi had a hard start to the season. I think he would have won the championship had those first 4 races where he failed to score a single point. I mean, that's 4 races where he's not scored a point. I think Verne won the championship and then by maybe 54 points. So it's still a lot to score in 4 races. Wouldn't have been easy. It would have been a great battle though between those two, de Grassi and Verne, as you mentioned, in Punta del Este. Earlier in the season they had a great on-track battle, and it would have been good to have watched that progress. And you look at the other drivers as well that kind of faded away. Felix Rosenqvist as well at the start of the season, he really put a good championship battle, and Daniel Abt had a few really good results and probably one of the most improved drivers on the grid. But in the end, Verne was just too strong for the rest of the field. But yeah, de Grassi certainly deserved second, but at the same time Sam Bird very proud to be top 3.
Yeah, and it was a tough start to the season for Audi, as you mentioned there, but they managed to win the team championship, beating Techeetah by just 2 points in the end after a penalty for Andre Lotterer when he jumped the race start. That put him right down the order. But team boss Alan McNish was delighted.
We knew there was a fighting chance before we came here, but we didn't realise that it was a real chance until last night when we got the first and second. And then, to be honest, we didn't know until the 10th car crossed the line exactly where we were and what we had. But both drivers did a brilliant job today under difficult pressures, I've got to say. And the mechanics at the pit stop, super happy, super proud, super relieved.
And Adam, it still feels a little bit strange to say that we're at the end of a motorsport season in July, but of course it's not long until Formula E is back.
Yeah, that's right. The next season will start in December. Again, I always find that a bit of a strange starting time as well, because you're just ending the calendar year. But you look at other motorsport series, Formula 1, for example, finish in November. So it's a good opportunity in that kind of off-season in Formula 1 for Formula E to attract new fans. But just hearing from Alec McNish there, huge credit to the Audi team for winning the Constructors' Championship by just 2 points, and perfect weekend in New York. A first, 2 seconds and a third, and very well done to the Audi team. And I just find that incredible that they've actually won the Constructors' Championship. We'd watched it kind of go down, that lead that Techeetah had over the course of the season. Mahindra were also up there at the start of the season, and DS Virgin Racing. But yeah, terrific for Audi, especially after those first 4 races for Degrassi, especially the amount of points they would have lost there. But yeah, terrific effort from Audi.
And Adam, we'll do a full season review on next week's show, but putting aside the likes of Verne, Degrassi and Sam Bird to one side, who's impressed you most during this season?
It's a very good question, actually. I'm going to say Felix Rosenqvist. I've always kind of rated him in the junior categories, and as I mentioned earlier, it was a shame that his championship challenge didn't quite materialise, but he won back-to-back races, winning the second round in Hong Kong and then in Marrakesh, and apart from that had 4th and 5th place, and yeah, his season just kind of fizzled out. Got a 5th place in the final race of the season again. And I think looking at teams as well, Jaguar seemed to be really on the up and, had a couple of decent results as well this season. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on next season as well, which obviously starts in December, as I said. So yeah, Felix Rosenqvist for me probably impressed me. And then obviously you've got the big names as well, that Jean-Eric Verne obviously won the championship. You have to say, obviously, the driver of the season, winning the championship pretty comfortably in the end.
Now, moving on to MotoGP, and Marc Marquez extended his championship lead to 46 points after he won the German Grand Prix at the Sachsenring last weekend. Now, Valentino Rossi finished in 2nd place, with his Yamaha teammate Maverick Vinales taking that final step on the podium. And Adam, we did say on the show last week that Marquez would be very, very tough to beat at this track where he's dominated in MotoGP so far, and that was the case.
Yeah, it's just been unbelievable, really, from Marc Marquez. What he's achieved at the Sachsenring, I think that's his 9th victory in a row in all classes. And you're right, looking at the race, you just had a funny feeling that he was going to take the lead, because he actually did lose it. He obviously got pole position on the Saturday, and then the Ducati was leading for a while in Jorge Lorenzo. But yeah, for Marquez, there's just something about that track that he loves so much, and he'll be hoping that MotoGP keeps on returning there, because it's almost a guaranteed win. And I did say in last week's show, if he didn't win, it'd be a huge shock, and expect his championship lead to increase, and it has. But yeah, I just find it incredible, the domination he's had, and it's in all classes as well. But yeah, this is certainly a track that Marc Marquez loves.
Valentino Rossi, as we mentioned, they're 2nd for Yamaha. They've still not got that first win of the season.
I really find this situation incredible with Yamaha, because they've been so consistent. It's not as if they're doing badly and they're finishing, kind of down in 6th and 7th. They are relatively competitive. I don't think they're a race-winning... Well, they're obviously not a race-winning team at the moment, but in the sense with the likes of Valentino Rossi, getting loads of podium, they've been very consistent as well this season. So that's the thing that's certainly, in my opinion, been the strange thing for Yamaha, because 2nd and 3rd in the championship, Rossi, Vinales, and they've not won that race. And I keep saying the race victory will come, but at the moment they've not got the fastest bike, so it's not just going to be handed to them, so they do need to improve.
Now, Rossi, Adam, this was bizarre, because he made some interesting comments this week just about the situation at Yamaha. Just tell us what he said there.
Yeah, well, I did have a laugh when I read this. Basically, Valentino Rossi, well, he had suggested that because Yamaha, obviously, they've not won that race in over a year now, and he was saying that some of the engineers at the team have now started to run away from him as a result of the Italians' constant demands for Yamaha to make that next step up in performance. But I just found that funny, his engineers running away from him.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, he may be a 9-time world champion, but yeah, it's interesting comments. And obviously, at the same time, Yamaha, while they're second and third in the championship, they've still got to be careful, because at the end of the day, riders want to win, and they've got to be careful kind of team friction doesn't start to come, and then it gets a messy situation, because I honestly do not believe that they're too far away. If they keep up the consistency, then the good results will start to come, because you look at other riders, Andrea Dovizioso, who's gone off the pace recently, Lorenzo had a poor start. Yamaha, on the other hand, they've been consistent and they're getting those points. So as long as they do that, I think it will eventually come for them. But they've just got to be careful they don't start kind of fighting with each other rather than looking for those solutions to fix the few issues that they have in the bike. Yeah, and Vignale is, of course, taking third place. So Yamaha, fairly happy with that. But Adam, Danilo Petrucci was fourth, which I thought was a fantastic result from the Pramac Ducati rider. Absolutely, beating both factory riders, and Danilo Petrucci taking Jorge Lorenzo's seat. So big statement for Petrucci as well, because obviously he'll be wanting to impress. Yes, he's got that Ducati riding the bag, but to get fourth place, a very strong result for him. He obviously had second at Le Mans in France earlier on in this year, which is a good result. But yeah, Petrucci just once again just showing us the talent that he's got and what he can perhaps bring to the factory team next year, and perhaps take the fight to Andrea Dovizioso and fight for race victories and championships, which I'm sure he will in his time at Ducati. Adam, one rider I want to get your thoughts on is Alvaro Bautista. He finished fifth in Germany, which was his best result of the year, but there's ongoing speculation about his future in the championship. Yeah, really impressive performance from Bautista, by far his best performance this season. I think he'd maybe got 1 8th place and a few 9th places, but yeah, fifth, a really strong performance. And you're right, yes, lots of rumours going about as far as Alvaro Bautista is concerned. He's kind of saying, he's showing that he can get fifth, he's a quality rider, but there's a lot of riders coming through, and unfortunately for him, it just looks as if he's going to struggle to keep his seat, because his team at the moment that he currently rides for, that's being replaced by the new Yamaha satellite operation, and it doesn't look as if he's going to get the seat there. So he's now looking to get another seat, and a lot of the top teams are obviously already cancelled out, and even a lot of the other satellite teams as well. So for Bautista, he really got a fight in his hand, but putting in performances like he did in Germany last weekend, certainly not going to do his hopes any, or do his case any damage. Yeah, and Ducati's 6th and 7th, disappointing result for them, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Again, Lorenzo taking an relatively early lead in that race, and again, we know how we've talked many times in the show about how difficult the Ducati can be to ride, and perhaps whether it's quite tiring Lorenzo, but yeah, to drop back and behind the likes of Petrucci and Bautista, it's just a real disappointing. It's just been a disappointing season overall for Ducati, I have to say, because we're expecting Ducati to take the fight to Repsol Honda, Andrea Dovizioso in particular, but yeah, 6th and 7th, nothing to shout about. And it is great to see Lorenzo competitive again. He had those 2 victories in Italy and Catalonia, but his last 2 results, 7-6, you could argue that again we're back to the kind of level he was at, well, not to the bad level that he was at before, but it's just kind of, he's not got the same edge that he had in those 2 races. So it was always going to be tough for the likes of Ducati and Germany. It's a Marc Marquez circuit, and we know that he dominated, won there for the 9th time or whatever it was. So yeah, but for Ducati it's a pretty poor result. And Adam, we'd mentioned before this race about Dani Pedrosa announcing his retirement from MotoGP at the end of the season. He had to settle for 8th, but what about Britain's Cal Crutchlow as well? That was a really frustrating day for him, crashing out, and that's not how he would have wanted things to end. Yeah, you're spot on again for Cal. I've always said it's the consistency that I feel is letting him down, and not necessarily his fault. He had that great start to the season, but yeah, again, it's another retirement for Cal, and it will get really grating for him, I feel, because he's now going into that summer break, as you mentioned, with that kind of in his mind, the DNF, and unfortunately for LCR Honda, they're not understanding a lot of the time when he does crash out. Of a lot of it is to do with the tyres, so they've got a lot of work to do in realising how they can fix it. So it's not necessarily a Cal Crutchlow issue, but perhaps more to do with the setup of the bike. But yeah, the bike's quick, and I just hope in the second half of the season we can get back to the level he was at the start of the season, fighting for race victories and podiums, because he actually only had 1 podium, and that was the race when he had in the second race of the season in Argentina. Now, let's take a look at all things rally, with not long to go now until Rally Finland, as the WRC returns from its break for the 8th round of this year's championship. So let's recap the season so far with rally expert David Halley. And David, firstly, how would you compare this season to 2017?
This season, I think, is much more competitive. We've seen several drivers up there. It's still between Terry Neuville and Sébastien Ogier at the moment, but the others are not that far behind. Of course, the big news was losing Chris Meek to a sacking for too many accidents a couple of events ago, so that has coloured the championship a bit too.
And you mentioned Thierry Neuville there. He's got a 27-point lead at the top of the driver standings. How impressed have you been by him so far, David?
I was impressed later. Earlier in the season, he was slightly overdriving again and had a few incidents that put him off, but he seems to have got his head round it and got the car under him that he wants.
And how important do you think that win last time out in Sardinia was for him?
Very, very important. Almost Sebastian's backyard, and there he is taking the win. And yes, I think that's going to give him a lot of confidence going forward in the championship.
And you mentioned Sébastien Ogier there. How would you assess his season so far, David?
He was very good in the very early parts of the season. He's had a couple of, I wouldn't say lacklustre, just not fully focused results. I think he's taken the result that he's been able to get, and he's won the championship many times, as we know, and he knows how to win the championship. So he's not given up by any means. He's been working very hard on the car over the 5-week break. They haven't all been away on holiday. They've been away testing. They've been away working, and the teams have been backing that up as well. So we'll see some different cars appearing in Finland.
David, you're alluding to some different cars taking place in the next race. So what kind of developments are the teams looking at making for this one?
All the teams are working flat out all the time to develop the car. Now, if you consider that Sébastien Ogier has been with M Sport Ford for a year and a half in what is basically the same design of car, the car is still evolving. Every week there's bits being looked at, there's parts of it changing, and not just from the driving perspective. Things like Julian Ingrassia, his co-driver, he's moved his seating position very slightly to get himself more comfortable so that he can concentrate more on giving the notes.
That's interesting, David. You know, I dare say it's those little kind of fine margins that sometimes make the difference.
Absolutely, the driver and the co-driver have to be comfortable in the car. They don't. They have to be supported fully in the car and able to move. And it's quite bizarre to consider that 18 months into using the car, they're still adjusting how they sit in the car, how they drive it, and how they approach the car from the inside as well as out.
And David, Sébastien Ogier will be taking part in the Red Bull Ring round of the DTM, which is the German touring car series. In September. Do you think that's just going to be a one-off appearance, just a little bit of fun? Red Bull, of course, one of his sponsors. Or do you think we could perhaps read more into this one?
Nothing. I don't read anything into it at the moment. It was something that Sebastian Loeb did throughout his rallying career. Had a bit of a go at racing here and there, and as you know, Red Bull are the sponsors of not just the car that he's going into, but also the circuit as well. It's their home circuit. So I think it is just about getting the Red Bull drivers into the cars for that event. But who knows in the future? Sebastian could find that the DTM, obviously based around Germany and in Central Europe, is easier to commute to for a man with a young family, so it may be a career move.
But having said that, it is a series that's not without its challenges as well, and Ogier coming towards the end of his career in motorsport, so you know, would a full-time drive there interest him, do you think?
I think Sebastian's one of these guys, like a lot of drivers, that give him something with the steering wheel and four wheels, and he'll want to get the best out of that just for his own personal satisfaction. And all drivers are like that. And when you go way back in time, Jim Clark used to do rallying as well as his Formula One, and he would do saloon car racing. It was just, if it was there to be driven and driven fast, then these guys want to do it.
Hi David, Adam here. Just looking at the other drivers, Ott Tanak, he's third in the Drivers' Championship in 77 points, and yes, he'll be wanting to compete for the championship, but at least he's best of the rest in his first season at Toyota and getting the better of his teammate Latvala.
Absolutely. Latvala was always going to be in trouble once Tanak turned up. He is a very, very quick and able driver, and as we've said before, he's developing the car to how he wants it. Now, he's been testing in Estonia, his home country, because the roads there are very similar to the Finnish roads, and he's getting a handle on that car. And as we've just said, with all the drivers, it's about being comfortable, it's about seat time, and these things all help to get the results. And he's had a couple of issues with braking the car, so let's hope he can string it together and come up with a result that he deserves.
And that win in Argentina was great for him as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's got the ability to win. He knows how to win. He's won before previously. He's won this year in the car, so it is about just taking that forward.
Now, David, Danny Sordo is 5th in the standings on 60 points. He didn't take part in Sweden and Sardinia, so I mean that's a pretty decent points haul as well, considering he retired, of course, at the opening round in Monte Carlo.
Absolutely. I think Danny has surprised everyone, including himself, as to how good he has been this year. And yes, it would be good to see him having a full challenge, but a lot depends on how the driver market pans out during the latter part of this year.
And Andreas Mikkelsen, he's had a tough first full year in the sport. What do you think he'll be looking to achieve between now and the end of the season?
Consistency is where he needs to be consistent. He is fast, but he's had issues. So again, he needs to tie down some consistency, and he's got the skills. He just needs a bit more seat time.
And David, Elfyn Evans has finished on the podium once this season, second in Portugal. How important is it for M Sport that he delivers more performances like that for the Manufacturers' Championship?
Both him and Timo Sunninen have to back up what Sebastian's doing, and they've been a little bit shy of that this year. So it would be good to see them performing where they should do. Timo did this event last year in the World Car, so he has experience. He is Finnish. He knows the roads. I'm hoping for great things for him.
And just finally, David, taking a look at the Manufacturers' Championship, Hyundai are top of the standings on 212 points, 28 points ahead of the M Sport team. How do you see that battle playing out?
Well, that's where Elfyn and Timo have to come to the party and start scoring consistently at the top end of the leaderboard in each event. It requires all the team to perform, and this is where Hyundai have not only had Terry Neuville doing the job, they've had Danny, they've had Andreas managing to pick up points here and there. So it's a group effort, a team effort on that one.
And David, Toyota aren't too far behind M Sport as well in the standings. Do you think there's any risk that they could perhaps leapfrog M Sport into second place?
Absolutely. There's everything to play for, and with the three lead drivers battling it out at the front and ably supported by some very, very quick drivers, and Latvala still got it when the car is absolutely right. He very much relies on the car being right. He will not drive round a problem. If he gets the car how he wants it, then he will be there as well.
Great stuff, David. Thanks very much, as always, for joining us here on the show.
No problem. We'll do it on the start day of Rally Finland next week.
Looking forward to it. Rally expert David Halley there. Adam, let's take a little look now at everything going on in the Scottish scene, because Paul di Resta was in action last weekend. Just tell us how he got on.
Yes, Paul di Resta, obviously most well known, I suppose, for Formula 1, driven for Force India, and he was also the DTM champion in 2010, the season before he joined Formula 1. He's gone back to the German touring cars for the first last year, and he was racing this in Zandvoort, which I believe was the 5th round of the season, and he got a double podium, 2nd and 3rd, so a terrific result for Paul di Resta. He's driving for Mercedes, and at the moment Mercedes, not the dominant side in DTM, but certainly probably the best team at the moment in terms of the start of the year. And this is, of course, Mercedes' final year in the German Touring Car Championship before they then focus on an entry into Formula E next year. So going to be interesting to see how all the Mercedes drivers do, because there's 6 of them on the grid at the moment, and there's only 2 places up for grabs in Formula E. Or will Mercedes even look elsewhere? So lots to discuss, but great result for Paul di Resta, 2nd and 3rd. So it's looking good in terms of maybe a championship fight.
Adam, I think Paul di Resta is a shoe-in for that Mercedes Formula E drive, I have to be honest with you, because he's been pretty successful in DTM. He's still fairly young in motorsport terms. He's got a lot to offer. I think a little package between him and Gary Paffett in Formula E could be very, very competitive.
I would like to think so. The only concern I have with that lineup is it's all British. Now, I just feel people like Pascal Wehrlein, who are also part of the Mercedes DTM and have had that Mercedes connection for so long, will Mercedes want to keep a German connection? The advantage Paul di Resta has got is, of course, that he has tested a Formula E car, so he knows a lot about it, so that's an advantage he's got. Also, an interesting one, Nico Rosberg, he's tested the Gen 2 car, hasn't he? Would he maybe be interested in coming back to a more family-friendly, perhaps, championship in terms of don't have as many races? Would that maybe suit him? Does he like Formula E? So there's an interesting one as well. A lot of people did actually say when Nico Rosberg retired, he'd missed Formula 1, he'd maybe look to do other categories in the future, but he's not actually done anything since then, so you never know. So there's lots of different questions about that one, but I would certainly hope from a Scottish perspective it would be great to see Paul di Resta in that seat.
And di Resta is just 27 points behind championship leader Gary Paffett in the DTM standings. Do you think he could challenge him all the way here?
Well, I think so. Gary Paffett's probably, well, he deserves to be where he is just now. He's had 3 race victories. He's had a couple of bad results as well, finishing 15th in race 2 at Hungary and then 13th in one race as well. So I think that could be where Paul di Resta can capitalise. Di Resta's been a lot more consistent, but at the end of the day, he's just not got those results. And I think it kind of summed it up in Zandvoort, because we're saying Paul di Resta got 2nd and 3rd. Well, in both those races, Gary Paffett, the championship leader, finished ahead. Paffett winning in Zandvoort in race 1, di Resta was 2nd, and then in race 2, Audi's René Rast won that race, giving Audi their first victory of the DTM season this year. And Paffett was 2nd in that one after starting from pole, and di Resta was 3rd. So di Resta's not kind of taking points off Paffett at the moment, and he needs to start doing that if he does want to mount a championship fight. Yeah,
and of course the next round in the DTM is Brands Hatch later. A kind of home race for both drivers, of course. It'll be an interesting one to see how that one unfolds. That's taking place over the course of the 11th and 12th of August. There's 2 races per weekend, per outing, shall we say, in the calendar in the DTM. Adam, what about another Scottish driver, Gordon Shedden? He was in action as well in this new World Touring Car Cup, which isn't abbreviated in the same manner and constantly trips me up, I have to say. So how did he get on?
Yeah, you're certainly not the only one that trips up, that's for sure. But yeah, Gordon Shedden, obviously British touring cars, he had a very, very successful career in that, but decided to kind of take the next level and go international. This is the first year with the World Touring Car Cup. Previously the World Touring Car Championship, and now have these TCR regulations which are a lot more cheaper. And well, it's a nightmare weekend. I think that's the best way to put it, really, for Gordon Shedden. A real shame. You mentioned DTM with the 2 races. This has got 3 races. Unfortunately, it was a case of 17th place, 16th place, and 1 retirement as well, just to cap off what was a miserable weekend, to put it mildly, I think, for Gordon Shedden. So he'll certainly be hoping for better at the next round.
But fair play to him, at this stage in his career. He was very successful in the British Touring Car Championship, and he decides to make that move into another series.
Yeah, there's a real opportunity, because this is the first year of a brand new championship. Obviously, the privateers, so new teams as well going there, and perhaps at his age as well, he's maybe thinking, well, what left has he really got to achieve in British touring cars? He's proved himself, and perhaps taking it to the international level and just having a bit of fun as well, and obviously seeing where it takes him. I'm sure he would have hoped for better and to perhaps be fighting for kind of podiums and race victories, but at the same time he's had a couple of good results as well. Finished 5th a couple of times, and he's finished 4th as well, so he's not been too far off a podium in a few races, but he's just had a lot of disappointing results where he's finished outside the top 10, and that's what's really cost him. So you're right, it's been great for Gordon Shedden. The fact he's taken this step, as I said, had very little left to prove, if anything at all, in British touring cars, and it was the perfect opportunity, I feel, with this new championship. Shedden, at his age as well, probably the best chance he's going to get to go international, go into a different championship before retirement.
Yeah, and just looking through the Drivers' Championship, Adam, there's a real blast from the past, really, of some of the names in there. It's Gabriele Tarquini that leads the way in 202 points. Make your way down, Jan Muller, a very experienced touring car driver, and then it gets a little bit further down. We head towards Gianni Morbidelli, another ex-Formula 1 driver in there. So there are some decent names in that championship, and we'll certainly be keeping an eye on how Gordon Shedden gets on and the remaining 4 events here on RockSport Radio. Now, Adam, it's time for the Final Lap Challenge here on Pole Position, as you tell us 6 stories from the world of motorsport this week in just 60 seconds. And Adam, you were wanting somewhat of a steward's investigation into the result last weekend, but let me assure you that you didn't beat the stopwatch, you were just outside it.
Well, what I do is I normally have my stopwatch on in here, and as soon as you say your time starts now, I press the start, and I'm telling you, I was about 59 seconds when that clock finished last time.
Well, I beg to differ, and Adam, quite frankly, I'm the one at the other side with the timer here, so I'm afraid not on this occasion. So yes, let's see if you can get back to winning ways, Adam. Really looking forward to seeing how you get on in this week's challenge. So your time starts now.
Starting with F1, and Renault boss Cyril Abiteboul believes F1 should reduce the number of races on the calendar to massively increase the value of the sport. This year there's a joint record of 21 races, with Abiteboul believing 15 to 18 races would be more beneficial. Haas F1 team have announced they will skip the 2-day test after the Hungarian Grand Prix. The test is scheduled to be the final in-season test of the year, but the American team has decided to analyse data that it's gathered in recent events before the summer shutdown. The Trident Formula 2 team have terminated the contract of Haas junior driver Antonio Ferrucci. The American driver has been banned for 2 rounds of the F2 Championship following a string of incidents which included crashing into his teammate at Silverstone. Laguna Seca is set to return to the IndyCar calendar from 2019 onwards. The track will replace Sonoma as the season finale for the next 3 seasons. Tom Sykes will leave the Kawasaki World Superbikes team at the end of the season. The Englishman spent 9 years with the Japanese manufacturer and won the championship in 2012. And finally, Formula E drivers Jean-Eric Bernat and Andre Lautre were both fined €5,000 and given 2 penalty points at the season finale in New York. The cheater drivers were given the penalties for wearing non-compliant underwear. What a story to end that on, eh?
And 3 seconds over the 60-second challenge as well, Adam.
I was determined to do it as well after your cheek. Not to be.
Don't hate the player, hate the game, man. Do you know what I mean? You're doing so well, so we got to that last one, and what a story as well, you know.
Well, it's one of these bizarre stories, isn't it? It's actually happened before to Lucas Di Grassi as well, so it's not the first time it's happened, but yeah, getting a penalty for wearing non-compliant underwear. I mean, you're wondering how do they even check these things out?
It's absolutely baffling, yes. And I dare say Jean-Eric Vergne not complaining too much, of course, after winning the championship there. So yeah, interesting.
He won't be caring at all. He'll be delighted to have won that championship, and congratulations to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's been a great driver. You mentioned there just how unfortunate he's almost been in Formula 1, but I think he's personally, if it were me when he was in there in the Red Bull system, I would have kept him in there. But credit to him, he's got to adapt to Formula E, and it's a very, very different sport as well. It might look like Formula 1, but the reality can be quite different. And unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on Pole Position this. But we'll be back from 8 o'clock next Thursday night to do it all again. Thanks very much to our guests, to you, of course, Adam, as always, and for you for listening. And here's Ian Martin.
Love music, live sport. Pole Position with Andy Alston and Adam Todd on RockSport Radio.